the microphone. I need to hear feedback. Are we okay back there? Okay.
The only request I have is last time when people in the audience ask questions, I don't always hear them.
Yeah.
So questions are asked, would you repeat the question? Because I can read it.
Sure. Be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Happy to do so. Please jump in and remind me to repeat it if I forget. Sometimes we, if you were here in April, or in March, we were kind of going back and forth. So happy to stop, pause, repeat the question if that's required. So I'm Joe Cook, Superintendent of Schools here. For those of you who attended the presentations late winter, early spring, we had an opportunity to talk through the project that went to the referendum on April 2nd. Tom Cardhauser is our Director of Business Services. He will be joining me in the presentation tonight. Kurt Riebelhaus is right here. He works with us through these projects. And then we have a number of folks from J.P. Cullen, from Bray, and from Baird & Associates who are here tonight to help answer any questions that you might have around the scope of the project that is in the survey, that is related to the finances, particularly the tax impact and the budget for the project. So we have folks here that can answer any of those questions. We wanted to have the experts in the room if it was required to provide an answer to you. So information session tonight. A community survey hit your mailboxes a few weeks ago to get some feedback on a proposed project that, based off of the feedback that we had from April 2nd, we wanted to be able to come back, take that feedback and say, hey, community, is this something that you would support? So we are in that survey, that feedback cycle right now. Tonight we'll go over the results of the referendum. What did we hear? What did we hear from citizens who attended these workshops? What did we get in phone calls? What did we get in emails? And then when we looked at social media, what were some of the comments there? What the middle school need is. We'll talk about that tonight, but we'll also have an opportunity at the end to walk around the school. If you haven't had a chance to come in to take a look at our building here, we'll be able to go into some classrooms, we'll be able to check out the gyms, the boiler rooms, and point out some areas that we have some concern, which is why we're bringing this idea forward. We'll review the middle school plan, so what you have in that survey, we'll get into some detail on that. We'll talk about the revised budget plan, particularly around the tax impact. We know that was a concern with the first project. Again, we want to be able to talk through that tonight. And then we'll have the community survey up there. In an interest of time, we'll go through the presentation first. If you have questions, you have a notebook down, whatever it might be, please hold those questions until the end, and we'll be happy to do some Q&A at the end. So, April 2nd, 2024. The original project that we put forward was a $102.3 million project. Mill rate impact was $69 on a $100,000 value of your home. On the board here is the results of that referendum question. It was 45.9% in favor, 54.1% opposed to that project going forward. That was on April 2nd, Tuesday, April 2nd. On Wednesday, we had a meeting as a team, took a look at what those results were, and started to talk about, what did we hear? And what are our next steps with that? So, from our community, we heard that original project was too expensive. We heard from people in the presentation about the timing of the vote. It was an April vote instead of a November vote. We had an overall lower voter turnout. If we compare across projects, the 2016 referendum had about 3,500 more votes cast during that April ballot than we did this past April. We had 9,999 votes cast during that election, one shy of 10,000. We heard from the community about there's been too many recent tax impacts. So there was a municipal referendum. You guys, we as a community, the municipalities have reassessed our homes. We still have debt from the 2016 high school that we're paying off. We did notice again that less community engagement. One of the questions that we had internally as we were talking, we just didn't hear. We didn't hear from the community. We didn't have a lot of outreach from when we originally proposed that and the board passed that in December through January, February, and then we started to have some of these listening sessions. And for those of you who attended, we had somewhere between 10 and maybe 25 people at those listening sessions. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. We didn't hear much about that original project. We heard that there was less support for the elementary portion of the project. We had people questioning, the investment in 4-year-old kindergarten, the investment at Big Bend for the additional parking and turnaround for families. But we did hear, and we consistently heard, even for people who questioned the timing of it, we did hear that there was interest in focusing on the middle school project. That still was a priority, but to what degree and to what time, that was some of the information that was shared with us. So to go back, there were 4 community sessions that occurred in May of 2023. And through that process, Tom Cardhauser, the folks from Gray, Sean McNulty, my predecessor, had a community discussion as to what are our priorities and what are our needs. There were ideas that were brought forward around elementary schools. There was a project that we surveyed last summer that talked about some expansion at our high school. We talked about the middle school, and as a result of those community groups, they talked about the priority for 4-year-old kindergarten, some work being done at our elementary schools, but then also the priority of building a new middle school. So this original building, we'll show you a slide that kind of breaks down what this school was built. It was built in 1954. So we're at 70 years old for our building. We have some needs around our major building systems. We can point some of that out to you a little bit later, but plumbing, heating, ventilation, our electrical systems, sections of the roof here need to be replaced. So again, that's an investment. We have some work on the outside of the building as far as the brick, windows, classroom floors, the lighting, the ceiling. We can point that out to you in the cafeteria here, but as we walk around the school, and then the hallways are narrow and they get congested. So if you attended the presentations in the spring, and if you looked at the materials we presented, these are the same reasons. These reasons haven't changed. In addition, for those folks that come through town in the morning between, say, 7 o'clock and 7:30 a.m., I think everybody's very familiar with the congestion that we have on the corner of 83 and Veterans Way. Back up there, the challenges that we have getting in and out morning and evening. We have some small classroom spaces. If we have a chance, we'll walk around and take a look at the technical education spaces, the music spaces. Our kitchen servery, we can take a peek in there tonight. You can see that the kitchen space here at Parkview is small, especially in comparison to the fact that we have 750 or so students. We do have some challenges with ADA compliance in the building. We'll show you the area where that's an issue for us. Again, gym space, we've talked about it. If you drive by our schools in the evening, right after school lets out to 8, 9 o'clock at night, particularly in the fall and in the winter, you will notice that our parking lots are full. And the schedule of events that are happening in our school, it's very, very busy. Middle school, high school, and even at our elementary locations. So here's, again, part of the need. Again, this need has not changed since we were here in the spring of the year leading up to April. The building 50 years ago transitioned from being the area senior high school to a middle school, junior high building. So it's been in operation for 50 years as our middle school. This is what I mentioned earlier. If you see the original building up there in brown, and I'd ask that you commit part of this to memory because this is going to be important as we get into the updated project and then the updated cost. The area in brown is the original portion of the building, 1954 build. There was an addition done, and those are in blue up there, in 1993. So the area that I'd ask you to pay close attention to, we're sitting in it right now, but it is this light blue region here down at the bottom. It's about 1,000 square feet, 34,000 square feet of space. Just want you to be mindful of that as we go through the presentation. As we mentioned in the spring, and we talked about before, our music areas are small. Classroom ceilings are very low. If you have a chance to go by MHS in the evening, you see the music rooms right next to that beautiful Performing Arts Center we have. Those ceilings in there are 15, 20 feet tall. They're true music spaces. You can get the full orchestra in there, you can get the full choir in there, you can get the full band in there for practice. Right now, we rotate sections of the band in, and when the band is performing, you can hear the band by the main offices and around the corner. So even with the band door closed, it is a very, very loud space. We have students practicing in the hallways during the school day, which can cause some challenges as far as just disruptions of other classes. Our gymnasiums, as I mentioned before, we need to have the gym space for both physical education, but then our extra and co-curricular activities, basketball, volleyball, these gym spaces are very full for the better part of the year. Family and consumer education, we'll get an opportunity later to take a walk through. If you see those kitchen spaces there, I don't know how many of you still have children at home, grandchildren, but when you're in the kitchen trying to prep the dinner, and it's you, your husband, wife, and the kids walk in, I don't know of any kitchen that's big enough to have the kids and the parents trying to get the meal put together. We usually have between 5 and 8 kids working in these spaces, and as we get around and see, you'll see how congested those family and consumer ed spaces get. If you've been to the high school and you've seen the professional kitchen that we have there, the food prep area, it is second to none. We would like to expand this area for more instructional space, more functional space for our students who are taking the CTE courses. Our cafeteria is crowded. Luke, we currently run how many lunches? We run 4 lunches. It starts at 11 o'clock in the morning and it ends at 1 o'clock. So our students are eating lunch anywhere between 11 o'clock in the morning for the first. They're about 30-minute lunch periods. So you can have lunch at 11, you can have lunch at 1 o'clock. That does dictate on how the rest of the building schedule runs. So we do have some limitations with this cafeteria. If we had a bigger space and fewer lunches, we could have a little bit more flexibility in the instructional program. The library, we'll take you by there tonight. Again, it's met our needs, but when you look at the book racks, the actual bookshelves, the selection becomes limited because of the space. And it is a smaller library space. And again, we'll take an opportunity to look at that in a little bit. What we do have to use at Parkview is our hallways for instructional space. And while it's okay to use the hallway, what happens when students are doing this is this CTE course where these kids built these robots. This is in that area where you want to have a lot of involvement, you want to have a lot of engagement, right? When students are involved in that and when they're engaged, the volume goes up, right? And that is good, that is great. We want to see that. That's excitement. That's definitely students who are dialed into their learning. The issue that we run into is those 2 classrooms back there. That could be your math class and your English class. Those kids could be taking a test, they could be going through a reading. You get the noise from the hallway, then it starts to filter into the classrooms, and it's less than ideal for that instructional space, that core academic space. Additionally, in this top photo here, we can take you through there tonight. On the ceiling, you can see the air handling unit up there. That air handling unit is a very large unit. It only handles the air for that single classroom. And that used to be the old wood shop in the school. So again, within that career and tech ed space, we do have limitations. That is kind of the robot area where the kids work. It's right underneath that space. For most students, they fit underneath that air handler just fine. But there are students that it starts to get crowded. If you've ever seen the high school robotics program, the robots that they create, what they do with them, throwing a basketball, throwing a ring, our kids get limited because the overhead on there, you can't do what could be done if you had a normal ceiling height in that space in the classroom. Again, there'll be an opportunity to see that later. Our intersection, this photo right here just shows our traffic flow. For those of you who are familiar with this at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, this picture doesn't fully capture how backed up the traffic can get. We did have a number of times this past year, particularly in the winter months, where the traffic was backed up from Parkview to the high school, and sometimes even further just depending on the weather. So you can see the congestion. What we have heard from parents is the challenge that they face when trying to get out of this parking lot back onto Veterans Way. If they have to take a left or a right-hand turn, what they're doing is they're taking the right-hand turn, they're going down by the district office, or either cutting through the district office, or they're turning into the condo units across the street, because there's no quick way then to go back in the other direction. So again, something we're trying to work with through this project. So When we talk about remodeling, we did hear that. Why can't you use some of the existing space? Why can't you utilize this current building? The existing layout of the building, based off of where it's located on our property, but then also the overall layout of the building, and we'll talk about that as we walk through the building a little bit later. There's limitations as to what we can do. There's limitations in the layout. The renovation, again, would be conducted over multiple years. So it would take about an additional year to fully renovate this space. And this was something that was heavily discussed last spring, is do we do a renovation or do we build new? And it was one of the reasons why we proposed the original project to build new, because we would be able to run school while the new project was going on, while the new middle school was being built. We wouldn't have that disruption to the learning. And then traffic congestion still would be a very difficult thing for us to accomplish with the building sitting exactly where it is. So if we were to knock down walls, if we were to go up, the building is still on the corner, and we would still have some of the traffic congestion issues that we're facing today. So the revised plan. We're still looking to do a 1,200 student grade 6 through 8 middle school. That is what is in the survey. That's what we're asking your feedback on. The difference between the two projects, and it does impact the cost, and we'll talk about that later, is the fact that we'd be maintaining that portion of the building that I showed you on the graph before, on the picture before, which is about 33,000 square feet. We would be maintaining that 1993 section of the build. We'd be using that square footage of the new school. We would then again, as we talked about in the spring, classroom spaces, we'd be enhancing the classroom spaces, the lab spaces, the STEM spaces in particular. We would be looking at a very large cafeteria to do two purposes for us. The first would be obviously accommodating larger lunches so that we have more flexibility within the building schedule. The second part of that would be having a second performance area where our students who are involved in the arts would be able to come together. For instance, our bands and our choirs, where they'd be able to assemble together, not just in parts, and rehearse for their performances. And then that again, that space, that performance space would be a place where elementary schools could come to do their concerts. Now, if you've been familiar with any of our elementary school concerts, looking at Becky work at Big Bend, you know that the traffic goes down the road. We know that there's standing room only in our gyms. We know that we have grandparents who are coming, and the ability to get people in and seated comfortably for a performance, we want to be able to provide that for our elementary students. The PAC at the high school, we've expanded the usage for it next year. More elementary kids at a younger age are going to have a shot to perform at that PAC, but just due to the scheduling of the high school events, the community events, the middle school events, we're not able to open that up as much as we would like to. It's an area of continued focus for us, but we do know we need to have a second large space where we can get elementary type performances and middle school type rehearsals in. We'd be able to, again, talk about that gymnasium and fitness area for students and for community use. Our youth sports in the community, they are very, very active in their schools. We have adult basketball that comes into some of our schools. To have the gym space in order to accommodate that, we do need to address what we currently have here today at Parkview. And we'd be able to maintain, notice the practice, the football field, soccer field behind with the track around it. We'd be able to maintain those fields on this new plan. And this is what it would look like. So for those of you who were here in the spring, if you were reading the literature that we sent out, we did not have this blue section included in the proposed square footage. We were talking about a brand new building. Everything would have been new. What we're looking at doing is heavy renovations in that blue space, and then that new construction added on. We still would have what was the same proposed drop off and pickup, trying to pull all of that traffic the best we could away from the intersection. We will be working, we have talked about the traffic study, what would make the most sense in order to accomplish that. You can see where the soccer, football, and track would go on the property. So maintaining some additional space, doing new construction. Again, a lot of the feedback we heard talked about cost of the project, size of the project. Can you use some of the space that you currently have? And this is an attempt to take that feedback and build it into what our plan is. So with this, I will turn the presentation over to Tom, who will take us through the financial component of this.
All right, I'm going to use the microphone here for my part. So the cost of the project is decreasing from 102.3 million to 89 million. And on this screen here, you can see that 8.8 million dedicated to the middle school site development, 1.375 dedicated to the demolition of the parts of the building that will no longer be, and then the remaining $78.8 million towards the construction, the additions, and the renovations. So the total price tag on that is $89.1 million. All right, that cost of that project is decreasing here. For the parts that Dr. Cook said, we're keeping parts of the 1993 expansion. We reduced the scope of the track. The track that we currently have is a 6-lane track with asphalt. Ideally, if we were going to rebuild something new, we'd make it up to like the common standard that you'll find today. But we would just simply replace what we have. So rather than putting a rubber track, and with 8 lanes, we would keep it at 6 lanes and just keep the asphalt. So we reduce the scope of the track project. We will remove all elements of the elementary project, the 4-year-old kindergarten renovation in our traditional elementary schools, and also the previous referendum question that April proposed bringing in an expanded parking lot at Big Bend Elementary to relieve the traffic along Highway 164. Similar to the middle school here, Big Bend Elementary is really the same boat. So those some of those elements in the project have been removed, and ultimately this is completely middle school centric. There's nothing else embedded in this project being proposed and discussed tonight. Okay, so the impact that we discussed earlier here from the prior project was a 69-cent increase on the mill rate. In this proposal, the 24-cent impact on the mill rates here. So I'm going to ask Brian Brewer from Baird. Brian is somebody who helps school districts and municipalities when it comes time to borrowing funds for a wraparound project such as this. I'm going to turn over to Brian to discuss some of these parts. Okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Good evening. As Tom introduced, my name is Brian Brewer. I work at Robert Baird here in Milwaukee. My team, as part of the bigger Baird, we focus on working with public entities on long-term capital planning and financing. And so I'm a part of a team that works with about 300 school districts out of the 421 school districts across the state. So we see districts' plans at all different stages and different sizes and shapes and state aid reimbursement, all the different financial factors that go into the estimate of the tax impact. So the way this is laid out, you've probably seen this before from the previous referendum communication. Previously at 103.2 million, the estimate was a 69-cent increase. Because the project amount is reduced and we're delaying the project, the financing of the project by the estimate's a year. The mill rate estimate for this lower project cost is about 24 cents. I'll get into a couple of talking points as to why that went from 69 cents down to 24 cents. But at 24 cents, what that means is per $100,000 of property that you own, this project would add $24 to the debt repayment portion of the school budget. So, on a monthly basis, it's $2, and then conversely, if you own $1 million worth of property, it would add $240 to the debt portion of the school budget. We have some assumptions in here. I make sure that those are in there whenever we talk about it because it matters. It's what creates the math for what the estimated payment is, the principal and interest to be repaid over time. The estimate, we're phasing in the borrowing because you won't build this project all at once. So we're assuming two borrowings and a total repayment term of 21 years. One of the updates that we did from the April question that began around this time early last year, we lowered the interest rate assumption to a 4.75 to a 5%. Previously, we were at a 5.25% to a 5.5%, so we lowered it by about 0.5%. Primarily, the reason I feel more comfortable lowering it at this stage is that rates have, from last year to now, have gone down by a full percentage point. So I'll get into it in a minute, but right now, schools that are locking in April referendums, they're locking in around anywhere from 4 to 4.25. So the 475 is still conservative in today's environment, but that contributes to lower interest to be repaid over the repayment term, which then lessens the amount that needs to be collected via tax. The property value of the school district, of the communities that comprise the school district for 2023, the fair market value is $5.2 billion. We're assuming an annual growth rate of 2%, which is conservative relative to where recent growth rates have been. However, I don't personally think that the double-digit growth rates that we've been seeing can continue. So I would rather us model it at something significantly lower that's more sustainable over a long period of time. So we're using a 2% growth rate in that figure. And ultimately, this impact that we're talking about is not 24 cents by itself. It's 24 cents in addition to the final few payments on the high school debt. So your current bill rate for debt for the high school project from 2017 is $1.21. So we're saying it's going to go from $1.21 to $1.45 as the estimate. And then it'll stay at the $1.45 so that when you pay off the final few years of the high school debt, we'll reallocate that portion of the payment to the new middle school payments. So within your existing budget, relative to what you're paying today, it's the impact or the increase is the 24 cents or $24 per 100,000. Okay? So there have been some questions. It just doesn't seem like on a pro rata basis, a proportional basis, that lowering the project cost by $13.2 million should reduce the estimated impact by about 45 cents, right? It just doesn't proportionally seem that way. There's a variety of reasons for that, but some of the biggest contributors are, the 13.2 is the biggest contributor, because not only are you not paying back the 13.2, you're not paying back the interest on the 13.2. So all of that lowers the payment each year. Lowering the interest estimate by that 0.5%, as I described earlier, that reduces the total payment. And then updating the financing plan to reflect a debt prepayment that happened this spring, and the timing of when you would borrow. So the timing of when you would borrow, if the April had been approved, would be around now. It would be in this May, June, July time period, so roughly three months or so, 2 to 3 months after the election. We're pushing that out because the earliest you could decide to go to a referendum is November, and then so you probably wouldn't finance it until January. So we're a full levy year cycle out. That has an impact on the increase from that $1.21 to the $1.45. And so this is probably the best visual that I can share with you as to why it's not proportional. The black portion of this stacked bar chart represents the final few years of payments on the 2017 referendum. Before I leave that, because the board has actively managed that debt and has refinanced it when rates went to historical lows in the heart of the pandemic, and made additional debt prepayments, that black portion of the repayment is 7 years shorter than what was communicated back in 2016-17. So not only have they paid the debt off quicker, the interest costs has come in nearly $20 million lower than what was baked into the original communication and conservative estimates. So the board, since that time, has managed what the community authorized them to go do, and then construct the high school facility, which is an amazing facility. At the same time, the original financing was around 3 to 4%. They refinanced to 1 to 2%, and have continued to take that savings and pay off the debt as quickly as they can within the constraints of the budget. So all of these things are very positive impacts to the taxpayer. So why I say all that is that the $1.21 that's currently in this year's budget, if you were to start a new authorization in November, we would fill in the planned step down on the black portion of the bar with the first payments on the new debt, on the new middle school payments. And that's where that maximum increase of 24 cents, it occurs in that first year. And then each year as you go by, you're getting closer and closer as you pay down the remaining few years of the high school debt to a point where you are now fully paid off on the 2017 debt and only paying on the hypothetical 2024 debt. Okay? And so if I continue this chart to the right, basically all of those orange bars would be right at the dotted line. So you're effectively at the $1.21. So the impact of 24 cents is really only in those first five or so years. And if rates stay where they are today, we can lock in the rates that are around 4.2 right now, that will shave off another $5 to $6 million of interest costs. So that will further reduce that 24-cent impact that we're currently talking about. We can't project because we're 7 months away from locking that in, but I want you to know, because it's an important factor, that even though we lower these rates, actual rates are even lower than what we're talking about. So it's because we're wrapping around the final few years why it's not proportional, why that 69 cents to 24 cents doesn't seem right. It's because of that. And really it's the reality that, you know, with that dotted line there, you could fit, the district could fit a payment on approximately 75 million without increasing at all, like no 24 cents. You know, so, you know, that all factors into the discussion. So I understand that if you're not in it every day, it doesn't, you know, on the surface it doesn't seem proportional, but this is the visual as to why it's not, you know.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, so we talked about mill rate increase, and we're going to stay on that topic here for a couple slides here. So let's just take a quick second to explain what is the rate of taxation, what is the intensity of taxation of the Mukwonago Area School District on its residents here. So to do that, our overall, not just our debt levy, but to pay off referendum debt, but to pay our operating tax levy, the basic tax levy, to operate our schools, to get school buses, to turn on the lights, to have our teachers. When we add all those up, we have one basic tax levy, and we are at $6.20. And I want to talk about how do we compare that. So to do that real quick, we're going to just kind of take a look geographically here. All school districts in Wisconsin belong to a CISA area here, so we belong to everything in southeast Wisconsin, which is CISA 1, and then we have CISA 2, which has some of our neighbors here to our west. So we're going to just take a look at how we stack up in CISA 1, CISA 2, and then we'll look statewide with districts that have similar enrollments to us. So at $6.20, you can see us here in the yellow bar here. There's Mukwonago. So we are out of 33 schools here in the CISA 1 southeast Wisconsin area here. We are a full dollar below the state average, and we are 7th from the bottom out of 33 school districts. So in terms of where our tax intensity sits today, this is where it is. If we open it up to looking at CISA 1 and 2, so now we're looking at 77 school districts here out of this geographic area. We are 11th from the bottom. Okay, so you can kind of gather, well, where would a 24-cent rate increase put us? Where would we be at that time? Still well below the state average, and still low, relatively speaking, to our neighbors. When we take a look statewide, with the 10 districts who have enrollments higher than us, the 10 next above us, and the 10 districts below us, so we're looking really at districts similar to Mukwonago in terms of enrollments. Again, out of the 21 school districts here, we are 8th from the bottom, and again, well below the state average. So we just highlight that to show you where do taxes and the intensity of those taxes from our K-12 school district, how do they compare, and where are they at today? All right? So in sharing that there, we also just want to take a moment here to talk about the reassessments that took place. There are reassessments that have taken place in the town of Mukwonago, the village of Mukwonago, and I believe there's a couple other municipalities. I think the town of Eagle comes to mind. We have 11 municipalities, 11 different towns and villages inside of our school district boundaries. So they all have different timelines as to when they reassess, and we just want to take a quick moment to discuss what impact the reassessment by itself will have on taxpayers and on their tax bills. So, as I said, the town and the village of Mukwonago recently had their reassessments. The purpose of a reassessment is to establish new values in an equitable fashion for all properties in a municipality. So if a homeowner dramatically expands their house, okay, and adds on a 5-car garage or whatever it is, there is going to be a tax impact to that individual. And so by state law, municipalities have to reassess their communities periodically throughout time here. So on the next couple slides, we're going to try to help you understand. And again, Brian is kind of the resident expert and subject matter expert here, so I'm going to invite him back up to help us with this.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is the reason I am somewhat of an expert, is that this topic happens in every municipality, every so often, all over the state. This is the state's process, where the Department of Revenue every year provides the market value, it's called equalized value, for all communities. That is what the school district takes the levy to be collected, and then they apportion or divide that amount to be collected by the 11 municipalities that make up the school district. From there, that's where reassessment comes into play. So when the village or when the town receives the portion that is their equitable share based on the fair market value, they are then dividing that to be collected based on your individual assessed values within the municipality. So with the rapid growth that we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years, what's been happening is that fair market value has grown faster than the assessed values. And as Tom mentioned, under state law, the local assessors have to go through a process every few years to bring that assessed value to within 5% of the fair market value. So that, you were trying to be as equitable among the residents within the same town or village or city. So this is an adjustment of who's paying the local tax within a single municipality. So with that as a backdrop, we put a couple visuals. This one's based on the village's average, the village of Mukwonago's average increase of 47.5%. So the average across all of the village needed to be brought up by 47.5% to get within the framework of what the state statute requires. So having that as your knowledge, when you get your letter at home, the answer to will my taxes go up or not, all things being equal, let's assume it's the same tax year in and year out, but does the impact of the reassessment change my tax number? And it really matters as to, did your letter come in less than 47.5% change for your property? Did it come in exactly at 47.5%? Or did it come in at a higher growth rate than 47.5%? Because within that continuum, that will tell you whether your share of the current $6.20 that's being collected across the whole district, your share of the village's portion of that tax levy, will it go up, stay the same, or go down? Okay? And the thing that makes this more challenging is that that's a large number. The average growth being 47.5%. Historically, I've been doing this for 27 years. Normally that catch-up is, 10, 15, 20% average reassessment. So it's really, these numbers are higher because fair market values of properties have been growing double digits statewide and high single digits for the last 5-6 years. So that's why there would be a single reassessment that needs to catch up. by about 47.5%. And when I show the village, or the town, theirs was 58%. Their average across all the properties in the town was a 58% increase. So this is as simple as I can make it, that it's your property's change relative to what did the average of the municipality do. Okay? And so putting a little bit of math to it, this is also the village. And here's the middle row is basically if your home or property was the same as the average, and on a $100,000 value, the school tax bill was $620. When your value grows from 100 to 147,500, your tax bill is going to stay at the 620. If your value grew at 30%, so you're growing from 100,000 to 130,000, your portion of the tax bill, because the 130 is about 88% of the new average, so your 620 actually drops to about 546. So about 88% of that number. And then conversely, let's say your property grew by 70%. So you went from 100,000 up to 170. Your portion of that original 620 will go up, in that scenario, because you're growing at about 115% of the average. So it's really your property relative, percentage-wise, to what happened on average in the municipality. Okay. This visual I just added in mainly because the other large increase was the town, and so the average in the town was 58%. So same concepts go, right? If you're at 58%, your share of the 620 is the same, all things being equal. If you're 30% versus 58%, your portion is a lower percentage, so yours would drop to 510. And then if you're at 70, yours would grow to the 667. So these are snapshots in time. The reassessment process, again, happens every few years, trying to make sure it's properly portioned among neighbors within a village or a town or a city. And it's the primary reason, because there are differences, it's the primary reason when a school district that overlaps 11 different municipalities in this case, they apportion the taxes based on that fair market value that the Department of Revenue assigns every year, evaluates and assigns the fair market value every year. Because if not, if the town reassesses and it raises it local assessment by 58%, and a neighboring town doesn't, well, next year more of it would go to the town. That's not how it works. So for a technical college, a county, a school district, think of overlapping public entities that cross multiple townships or villages or cities. They apportion or divide the taxes to be collected based on the fair market value. And you're not alone. I guess that'd be the other thing. This conversation is happening all over the state. I mean, it's related to the rapid growth in property values that we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years.
So, just from a timeline, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're in a survey feedback cycle right now. What we need to hear from our community is, is this a supported concept? Is this something that people would want us to take forward and investigate further? Something that we would want to continue the conversation with our school board on? So from a timeline standpoint, again, on May 13th, our school board said, you guys can go ahead and survey the community. They voted on the community survey. In late May, up to now, you guys have the surveys in your mailbox. We do have additional surveys here. Ben, where are you? Ben's got additional paper surveys. We also have some computers set up in the back if you want to do it. If you want to do the online version of the survey. On June 5th tonight, we have the listening session. And then on July 29th, we're going to take all of the survey feedback that we got from our community, and right now we have about 2,600 responses. That information hasn't been broken down, but we have about 2,600 responses so far. And we're going to take and present the results of that survey to the school. So I know there's some posts on social media that say, hey, they're going to referendum again. We're not going to referendum right now. What we're doing is we're seeking feedback. We took the information that you gave us as a result of the April 2nd vote, and we're surveying the community to see if this revised project based off of that feedback is something that you support. If the community doesn't strongly support that, we don't go anywhere with it. If the community does, then we continue that conversation. But that will be at the July 29th school board. Yes, Mr. Bruce.
Dr. Cook, what is the survey deadline?
The survey deadline is June 24th.
So we have 2,600 responses. What percentage of response is going to make a decision? Because it's a small portion of the population.
Yeah, so we sent out 16,000.
Joe, can you repeat the question for
Yes.
us?
Craig asked, what was the deadline for the survey? The deadline for the survey is June 24th. The next question was, if you have 2,600 responses, that's a smaller portion. We need to have a sample size from our community. And what we look at is individuals who are non-parents, non-teachers. We're looking for the feedback from non-parents, non-teachers. We have the feedback from staff, we have the feedback from parents, but we know that our community, about 75% of our responses are coming from non-parents, non-teachers. So if you're not a parent of a child in the district, you're not a teacher in our school system, you're not a staff member, we need your feedback as to is this an appropriate project for us to pursue or not. Which is why, again, we're here tonight to provide information to you, answer your questions, and give you an opportunity to complete the survey if you'd like to. Survey takes, somebody told me today it took 1 minute to do the survey. They estimated that it would take about 5 minutes total on a high. So it's a very short survey. It really boils down to some information about who you are. They ask for age brackets, what municipality you live in, are you a parent, are you a staff member, and then it gets into, based off of the information we talked about tonight, the information in the survey, is this something you support?
Yeah, 2,600 again. How many people voted again this last time?
9,999 votes were cast. So we have a,
2016.
oh, for the 2016 or the 2000?
Most recent.
9,999 votes.
No,
April.
April of this 2019.
Yes,
April
April.
24, 9,999 votes were cast in that election on this project.
And how many in the last
It's about 30.
national election where you had a referendum? Have you had that before?
In 2016, it wasn't a national election. We had about 13,500 votes in 2016 during an April election. It was not a November election, it was a April election at that time. Yes.
So what's the expected growth, children, home sales, in and out? I mean, explain why you need this, other than that. Where's the people coming from?
So we are anticipating, so a couple of things on that, thank you.
Joe, you want to repeat that question?
Oh, yes. Where is the expected growth? Like, what are the reasons beyond what we just presented tonight that we would be coming forward with the project? So the answer to that is twofold. We're projecting, we had an enrollment study done in 2022.
Yep.
22,
Yep.
that projected we'd be growing somewhere around 300 to 350 students over the next decade.
Was that
So-
including 4K?
What's that?
Were you including 4K in that number?
That was total students, I think 4K through 12
Yes.
in the school
There was
district.
4K from other school districts transferred in?
No,
No,
that did
no,
not
that-
include, that was resident students. So that was a portion of it, so 300 student growth over time. The other part of it is the current building that we're in has somewhere between $7 and $8 million worth of capital maintenance that needs to be put into this building. If you have time later when we give a tour, we will definitely take you around. So before we invest $7, $8 million into a school that we know is only serving 2 grade levels, we want to be able to take a look and say, hey, is this something that the community would support? Because curriculum, and if we get into the instructional discussion, curriculum is written kindergarten through 5th grade. So you have essentially what is the elementary program is written from a standard standpoint and continuum a resource standpoint as well, kindergarten through sixth grade. Our district is configured 7, 8, and then 9 through 12. Our sixth graders are still in the elementary school, and the flow of curriculum does not go nicely into sixth grade. So we have the sixth grade group from what the student experience is, that they're missing out on what middle school experience is. Sixth through eighth grade is a common middle school configuration, just for perspective. They're missing out on the science, the math opportunities. We currently run a bus to the middle school in the morning for kids who are accelerated in math. They have kind of a 0 hour in the morning. Those elementary kids then go back to the elementary school and have a full day of school. So we know we have a need to get them here from a curricular and instruction standpoint, but then also what is offered. The music offerings, the career and technical ed offerings that happen in the middle school, the science and math opportunities that we have in the middle school. Our sixth graders are missing that. And so part of this project is to reconfigure the grades to get 6th, 7th, and 8th grade into a middle school where the instruction can be enhanced for the students. Does that touch on?
Well, I was elementary school, this is grade, it's on the back of us right now.
Yep, can appreciate that.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
One at a time. Sir, you haven't had a chance yet to ask.
In the original project, are they moving the 4K into the grade schools, which is then moving the sixth graders in the middle school? Since this plan doesn't include moving 4K into the grade school any longer, why are you moving the sixth graders instead of being a nice to do?
That's not a nice to
The other
do.
thing I want to ask.
Well, sir, can I answer your first question first? It's not a nice to do. Instructionally, sixth graders are missing out on a lot in our school system. And we will get into what those spaces look like. We're hearing that from our staff, we see that from our students, and we've heard that from parents along the way about those middle school offerings for sixth grade students. So from an instructional standpoint, having 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in a middle school is a better learning configuration for our students. And then the next part of your question.
What I heard was nice to do, having music room, singing installed, and air handling systems and all that. And I heard a lot of rooms were tight, up to capacity. But we have 650 open enrollment students in this district. When we talked back in April, everybody was telling us that we don't let open enrollment students into the schools unless they can be best.
Right.
Instead of spending $89 million for refurbishing the middle school, why do we take 650 open enrollment students?
So 650 open enrollment students from grades 4-year-old kindergarten through 12th grade. What happens is if you have 5 sections, 6 sections, 8 sections at a grade level, you're not having enough reduction to reduce teachers and save the cost, especially at the elementary level where there are 6 elementary school locations. So you cannot take 30 kids at an elementary school where you might have empty desks at the 3rd grade level, because 30 kids across, I think we have 18 sections, 15 to 18 sections, say at 3rd grade. That's 2 kids per classroom. That might be 6 kids at a school. That bringing those open enrollment kids in is a revenue generator for us at the grade level where there is space. If there's no space, there's no students that are accepted in at that grade level.
so my complaint is this referendum was put forward with a single flyer indicating these different things that were wanted, but wasn't answering any of the questions that an average person would ask. We all know that student numbers are declining. The state of Wisconsin and lots of other polling data and new housing development data all shows that people that are moving into this area are in the pre-retirement and retirement age. And for the rate of people who do live with children, they contribute a very minuscule part of this growing number that's supposedly needed for this overcrowding situation. So why is it you haven't made available to us data that shows what an accurate picture of the projection of student growth for the next 10 years will be? Because I'm in education at the college level, and we are all concerned about this diminishing number of students. It's all anybody talks about.
Yeah, I mean, just to be fair, the diminishing enrollment in college is separate from what the K-12
I
experience is.
understand that, but I'm
But-
addressing this.
When we went from those April workshops where we had the enrollment stuff, through what we presented this past spring. We had enrollment information out. So for the folks that were here, we had the projection, the enrollment projection.
Folks over here, 20 people?
But that was also presented in communications across our system. We had Key News that presented this to our community, and the Triad presented this to our community for about 2 years before we went to vote in April.
Well, I read the Triad, looking back to the little brochure that came out, and I didn't see that. You know, you're asking people to support something that's very costly, and you're asking that the majority of the people who are going to contribute are those who are in the aging population. The average home in Mukwonago is over $300,000 in value, not 100, over 300,000.
And that's why we upped our chart to $1 million on home value, so that people can use that for perspective. Yes.
But you're expecting the aging population to support continual referendums. You know, and this isn't the only increase that we experience. We have all different kinds of things, utilities, and well, we have the 2016 referendum for these important things. But I don't think you're substantiating why this is necessary.
So what question do you have that I can answer for you tonight?
I'd like to see your data and where you're getting it from. It supports the growing number of students that are necessary to take on a project like this.
Yeah, so Mr. Clark asked that question. We did send you an email tonight saying, happy to have you in because he asked us about 40 questions that we want to meet with him about and then do a FAQ on our website. But if you're available after the meeting, I'm happy to take your
It
information.
shouldn't just be me, it should be community-wide. This should be information.
Well, I think a lot of us are more informed. I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm in both of their categories. I have had 3 children with the school. I'm on my last one. I have a grandchild coming into the community. In 4 years, I will be someone in the community that doesn't have an interest in the school from a personal parental standpoint. So I completely understand what you're saying and the questions you're asking, but this has been going on for a long time. And if there was no student crowding, if we had just enough seats for everybody, that doesn't change the age of this building. When you have, you know, when you're living in a farmhouse in the village, I've lived in this community since I was 13. If you live in a farmhouse in the village, 90% of those houses have been completely gutted and redone, because of their age. So the expense to, and I didn't vote for this, FYI, and I didn't vote for, not for those reasons. I was on the committee, actually, for the first referendum because it failed. I know everybody thinks it passed, but it didn't. We had to go back to the drawing board. We had to figure out how to get the community on board. And we did that. I was on that committee, so I remember it very well. I didn't vote for this because it had nothing to do with the money in it. I live in probably one of the poorer communities, the neighborhoods on the other side of the track, so I don't live in a big $700,000 house or have 5 acres. It wasn't a money issue for me, it was a safety issue because I didn't see any provisions to safety in the schools. And that bothers me quite a bit in the day and age that we live in. But there's been, you know, so much talk about the expense of trying to continue to fix things that are becoming unfixable. I live in a home that's almost 50 years old, and, you know, there's no, we had to replace the furnace because there's no more parts for the furnace. It doesn't exist anymore.
Budget for maintenance.
There is.
Here, there's an operating budget for maintenance. So I can't take entirely.
But it's not enough.
Sure, and so we have 8 buildings, just for perspective, we have 8 buildings to maintain. This summer, we are doing $1.5 million, $1.8 million on high school, the original high school roof.
Yes.
So not the part that was touched in the referendum, but the old building. Next summer, we have $1.5 million to $1.8 million worth of work out of our operating budget that's going to go to Clarendon's roof. We have Rolling Hills that is nearing 25 plus years. We have roof work that we potentially see having to do at Rolling Hills. We have HVAC work that we're doing. So we have a $10 million budget right now to cover capital maintenance. We see capital maintenance as our responsibility. But in the current building at Parkview Middle School, I said before, we're just looking at $7 to $8 million worth of work that we need to put into a building that we know is not meeting our instructional needs in the system, which is why we put the survey out in, or we went to referendum in April, and we're coming coming back to you tonight for feedback, which is why we have the survey. If we can go forward with the survey results that the community gives us, we're not going to referendum right now, we're going to be asking questions. I appreciate where you're coming from, but we are asking questions to see if the community supports what is being proposed. Again, from a mill rate standpoint, Brian and Tom have talked about the finances piece. We went from 69 cents down to 24 cents. We heard from the community that the first project was too expensive. So again, we refined the plan based off of community feedback. So we have heard, we have listened to. The other thing, and we haven't talked about it in this presentation, but it's something that we're mindful of, and it was something we talked about back in leading up to April, is where the construction inflation sits right now. The rate of inflation in the construction industry in the 5-year average is extremely high. Shannon, I'm looking at you. It's higher than what we've seen in years past. Jason, if we delay that project, we're going to be increasing the cost on the same bill. And then that increases the expense. And then that, again, is something that we know we need. It's something we come back to from the community, and it's going to cost more money a year from now, 2 years from now. And that is something that we are mindful of when we come forward. And again, all we're asking for is feedback on the project. And if people support it, that's what we're going to go forward with. If we don't support it, that information is going to go right to our board for what their decision is. Sir, you're patient.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, thank you for having the meeting. And certainly not a subject expert here, other than just I have read a lot last year. I saw a lot of studies. I thought for sure when I went online, I would do studies supporting 6, 7, and 8 being put together. And much to the contrary, I read a bunch of studies where the proper configuration is K through 8. And when we added a sixth grader to it, to the 6th, 7th, and 8th, the high school dropout rate went up by 18%. And the primary reason, again, I'm not an expert, I just read a couple things, that the 6th grade mentality is much more of an elementary school mentality and not the maturity level of the 7th grade. And that caused learning issues in the 6th grade, and they eventually identified it in high school. So I heard that we want 6, 7, and 8 together. I read it for 3 days. I couldn't find one study that said, yeah, that's really the best configuration. So I want to make sure that that truly is the best configuration. Second, really quick question, and then I'll answer that. The other thing is that when I served in my business, I was involved in lots of renovations and capital projects. The first thing that I always had to tell my stakeholders was, what is my return on investment? For me, it was either the sales and profits. For you, it's more difficult. I haven't heard one discussion that says our ACT scores are going to go up by 7%. Our reading scores are going to go up. Because that's the return on investment to the community. I've heard about gyms and tracks, and it seems like really nice things. But I haven't heard a commitment to higher scores. I haven't heard that we're going to get it for ACT on average. Versus I think we're at 2021. So what can you tell me about what this is going to do for higher learning, higher scores, and higher success rates?
Okay, so you asked a two-part question. I'll answer it in 2 parts. First part, I just want to make sure I get is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or 5, 6, 7th, and 8th grade the proper configuration for middle schools?
6, 7.
Yeah, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So there are 800 middle schools in the state of Wisconsin right now. About 800, 850. There are only 40 of them that sit at a 7th and 8th grade configuration. So from a learning standpoint, when you look at all the data from a learning standpoint, I would like to see what was included in your review. Because oftentimes those studies are focused on large urban school districts that have a variety of different challenges that we have in the world. If you were to say, what does it look like in the Milwaukee Public Schools for a kindergarten through 8th grade building, where the kids start with you in kindergarten, it's a neighborhood school, perhaps it's a choice school, the data in there is going to skew the overall results of what that study looks like. When you look at Waukesha County, our most nearest neighbors, there's only one other school that has an intermediate school structure in another school district. Otherwise, the elementary school configurations in Waukesha County are grades 5 through 8 and 6 through 8. And that is because of the curricular design. That is because teachers, when they're planning at the middle school level, are able to plan grades 6, 7, and 8. We're able to look at English language arts standards, math standards, and instructional practices more holistically. Right now, our sixth grade teachers sit on an island. They sit in the elementary schools because it does not align to what the curriculum, which we adopt, we look at what the state standards are, we look at what our curriculum adoption looks like in the district, we present that to the board for approval. That plus the resource allocation is not common. We recently purchased a new math sequence, a math curricular resource for our elementary schools. It's called Bridges. It's excellent. You can look it up. You can do the research on Bridges curriculum. It is kindergarten through fifth grade because the break happens in fifth grade. You look at the next series of curricular adoption and the resources associated in English language arts, math, and science and social studies. It starts in sixth grade and goes up. From an instructional standpoint, that is an area that we have an issue with in Mukwonago. And our sixth grade teachers say it, our students experience it. And that is something that we look to remedy in this project. Your second part on the ROI. So you mentioned the high school. When we built MHS, we did a number of things at the same time. We did a new building, we expanded our career and technical education spaces. We expanded our elective opportunities for students, and we promoted those elective opportunities for students. And what we saw at that time was an ACT score that was 22 plus, it went down to 20. During that particular time period, we knew we needed to make adjustments. So from an actual flow of the building, MHS is a standard high school, from a configuration standpoint, it's grades 9 through 12. A 9 through 12 building next year is going to change the high school schedule to add an additional 30 hours of instruction per course per year, 15 hours per semester. So we've changed the building schedule. We have incentivized students to take advanced placement courses. We've gone on a weighted grade scale there. We've changed the high school administration to address some of the overall supervision, evaluation components of what we need at the high school. And we're looking at that and monitoring that in the future. We've also made it a concerted, we pulled the benchmark of ACT. We've made it a concerted effort to ensure that our curriculum is aligned to those ACT grade bands, that our teachers are collaborating around that, and that does not have anything to do with the structure of MHS. Now we're talking about that 8 years post-referendum where the high school added, Kurt, how much square footage did they add?
A little over 100,000 square feet.
100,000 square feet of space in MHS. If you've been there, you've seen the gym space, the Performing Arts Center. You've also had an opportunity to see the collaborative spaces that we have for students and that career technical ed space. All of that has been done, and now we're addressing the instructional piece. We have the lesson where Luke and his team here have taken our school report card, which is a very public-facing thing. When you started here as the principal, we were in the upper 60s, I believe, on the school report card. We're now scoring right about 80. We're in the 88th percentile as a middle school across the state from a performance standpoint, and we look to expand that in the future. So from the actual return on investment, where we will see a benefit is the exposure that our sixth grade students have in science, engineering, technology, and math, plus areas in the arts that have enhanced spaces. And what we've seen from a leadership and an instructional practice, we're going to see the sixth grade fold into that and see better collaboration on our teachers and enhanced student outcomes as a result of it. But with student performance, it's not widgets that we're counting. The ROI is different in an education field than it is how many pieces of material can you produce. It is a much different thing. Our staff K-8.
The point is that we're going to spend $89 million. We want our kids to come out and have better lifestyles.
Absolutely.
And they're going to, whether it's in the trades or the college or the path, we want them to do better. And I want to make sure that we're spending $89 million. That it's going to be not just niceties, not just better locker rooms, better education, better scores, more discipline, and higher math reading and scores. If you're telling me that's the case.
Yes, there was a resident, it's hard to quantify the actual, we did this and as a result we got that. We know that comes down to teaching and learning. We know that does, but we know a huge component of that is collaboration, and we know that our sixth grade staff misses that. I had a resident of the community last week. He shared some concerns on Facebook. So I said to him, our board president reached out and said, would you be willing to come in and meet with the superintendent? So we met for about 2 hours. We spent about a half hour in my office talking about the project. We came through here and took a look at the building. In that time with that gentleman, he had an opportunity to see the school in session. He had an opportunity to see the flow of the building. He recognized classroom overcrowding. He had really great questions about what we were proposing. He got an opportunity to go to the basic Luke was along, he asked great questions in principle on how does the flow of the school work. And I know that he left with a different picture. I can't say he's in favor of it, but he left with a different picture. He saw what it was like here on a day-to-day basis. And it did reflect what we were presenting as far as needs go in this. Joe, question in front of you.
This gentleman has hand earlier on the call.
Oh, sorry.
First, I just wanted to say, thank you and your staff for all of your hard work over the last couple of years in doing this. I'm a parent with a 7-year-old daughter in the district, so I am very much aligned with what is happening in this room today. I'm not sure how much other people are that have kids in this room that are aligned with this, but I'm just curious, are we really haggling over a yearly increase in somebody's taxes of $100? I'm looking at $100 increase. I'll pay hers, I'll pay yours if that's what it has to take. That's not that much. $100?
Yeah, I can't, so what I will never do is come in front of you and tell you how to spend your money.
Right, no.
What I am asking though, and so just from like the flow of this, from the original survey that we sent out a year ago in the summer, our first survey was about $123 million. It was $21 million for MHS. It was $102.3 million for the elementary work plus the middle school. When we surveyed the community at that time, the community did not support the additional work at MHS. So then when we took that project forward, we took the high school work off, and we continued to develop the middle school and the elementary school concept. We took that to vote in April. The community said no to that. At that same time, the community said the project costs too much, and we're not interested in doing the elementary work. So we went back to the drawing board and we took a look at, okay, what do we currently have that is usable, which is that 33,000 square feet, part of what we're sitting tonight, plus doing another 200,000-ish square feet of work to do the addition or the new component of the middle school. We looked at that from a financing standpoint, and we took that project cost from 69 down to 24 cents. And we looked at, is this going to meet our needs? And the answer to that question is, this will meet our middle school need. 24 cents on the mill rate, $24 per $100,000. Now, I know that there's community members that don't support that. When we get to the survey, which is up here, there's actually give us some feedback on the project. And the bottom one, and I know that that's a little bit hard to see, but the bottom right here by that, I will never support a school referendum. That's a choice for the community to give us feedback on. Right? Folks have the ability to say, hey, on this survey, I'm not in favor of this project, and I'm not in favor of it because I will never support a school referendum. And that's a fair response. Right? One of the things, the reason why we're back here tonight, I mentioned it before, we've reduced the cost. We know that these costs will work. We know these costs are accurate at this particular point. If we wait, those costs go up. The 20-year average in construction goes up, the 5-year average in construction goes up, it just goes up. It's going to cost more money. And the need is still going to be there. We have a 7th and 8th grade middle school. We have an aging building that's 70 years old. We have maintained that building to a point where we need to put a $7 to $8 million investment in. And I don't want to speak broadly for the community. I won't do that. But if we invest $7 to $8 million into this building and we still have a need, and we go back and say, hey, community, we still have this need, and what's the feedback we get? You just put $7 to $8 million into the school. Why did you spend the money? And hence the reason we're here tonight to say, here's the survey, please ask us your questions, this is what we project the cost to be. There was another question up here, sir.
What is the student capacity of this building today?
The capacity or what's the enrollment?
What's the capacity?
The capacity, we've been as high as 825 at the middle school. I'm trying to remember the last one.
The max enrollment, I guess I'm not sure of that, but the capacity, the max capacity in every seat, in every classroom is completely maxed out, utilized. Every minute of the day is approximately 900 and change. Our enrollment is about 750.
So where are the 6th grade students today?
Across all of our elementary schools. The question was, where are our 6th grade students?
And how many of them are there?
350, give or take.
Right. So if you've got 750 students here today, and you add another 350, you're within 100 students of your proposed new capacity.
Yeah.
Does that seem wise?
We looked at that 1,200 student number as that would be if, when that enrollment study was conducted, and they projected the additional 300 to 350 kids, that additional 100 students accomplishes the space that we would need in the building. One of the things, and as we go through a tour later tonight, you will find classroom spaces that are around 600 square feet. The current classroom size, Clint, I'm looking at you, is about 900 square feet for the average science class, math class, English class. And so when you see some of our classrooms, particularly in the science lab, you will see how the kids are sitting in that room. You'll see where their desks are. You'll see some English language arts classrooms where the desk configuration is very tight. If anybody's available tomorrow and wants to take a tour of the schools in session, I'm happy to take you through the building when we have our students here on the last full day. That's going to be a little bit of a wild day, but that is what it is. But I'm happy to show you what that looks like live, like I did for that gentleman the other day. I think one of the things, though, that stood out to me when that resident and I were walking around, in our classrooms, and we'll show you those a little bit, when the roof drains in this building, it actually comes through the school and then out the wall. It doesn't drain off the side. So you imagine how your own roof system in your home. You have the pipes come in. And one of the things that I heard from both students and staff members is on any day that it rains, it sounds like there's a waterfall in the corner of the classroom. And that is something that is new. Having worked in many schools, in large districts and small, I have never seen the roof drainage of a building actually come through the school and out the wall. We'll show you what that looks like from an instructional standpoint. Sir, you had a question?
Yeah, you said on one of the previous slides, you paid down the debt in May by $9 million.
Yeah.
So would those funds also be available for capital improvements?
No, it can only be used to repay debt.
So the question was the $9 million that was used to prepay debt, would that have been able to be used for capital improvements?
Yeah, so when we issued a tax levy this past fall here in 2023 here, there's two components to it. There's the operating tax levy, and then there's the referendum debt repayment tax levy. When you issue a levy, that goes into what we're saying here. When you issue a levy to pay off referendum debt, it can only be used to pay off referendum debt. We could not repurpose that money to buy textbooks or do anything else. There's one thing and one thing only you can do with that. That's what we've done.
What was the square footage of the original proposal and the square footage of this new proposal?
The original,
They are the same. It's 240,000 square feet of new building versus 33,000 of keeping this, and then the remainder to make up the rest for the 240,000 existing new building. So,
Is this still going to be reasonable?
Can you repeat that, please, sir?
so the question was, what was it again, sir? Just
The square footage of the original proposal, you're saying was 240,000
Yeah.
approximately?
Yeah.
And the new proposal will be about 210,000?
correct, plus the renovation work here. So
Yeah.
in total, the building size in total will still be the same size. We're just renovating versus building all of this.
so 240,000 total square feet.
Yep.
32,000 square feet of renovated space, 210-ish thousand square feet of new space.
So what is the cost per square foot of the old proposal and the cost per square foot of the new proposal?
So, how much? $301 per square foot now, and before it was $307 per square foot on the original project. So $6 per square foot difference.
So your comments sort of about the $100 you're going to pay, that's not only just the comment, it's all the homes in the line, when you look at the data, the majority of them are over $300,000 and up in there, so it's going to be more. But what you're disregarding is that senior citizens are on fixed incomes, and every single thing is going up, including, as you illustrated, the property tax value, our taxes are going to go up because property values are going to be assessed to 47.5%. So to say that it's a minuscule $200, that's not fair.
So let me
to
just-
the majority of the
I want to address the property tax piece again. Because, again, I'm gonna ask Brian to come up. Because that is one of the more difficult things about
We
reassessment.
need to go over and show the community how much it would go up per their property value. And she wants
So
to
this
know
one,
that.
yeah,
She
so,
was saying a $400,000 home is going to go up $96.
right. But you also mentioned reassessment, that all of our taxes are gonna go up. And it's important to pay attention. If you live in the village, Brian, I'll ask you to step into
Yeah.
this.
So that was what I was talking about with the Department of Revenue and the fair market value. That's what the $24 is based on. So when you go through a reassessment, it's because you've drifted away from the fair market value. So the 47% reassessment is to bring it back to the fair market value. So we're already baking in the fact that periodically each municipality is going to go through a reassessment. So we're using fair market value when we communicate the tax impact. Within this, keep in mind what I said, the average of the entire village is going up 47.5. So if yours is at or below 47.5, your share of that actually is the same or could be lower. So this blanket statement that our property values are going up 47%, that is not, that's why we have this slide here, is because you're being brought up to what the Department of Revenue's fair market value.
But lots of people are objecting to is people on fixed incomes cannot continue to have all these different assessments. You're focused on yours, but people who live here face other assessments, other levies, things like that. So every time the school benefit completely ignores the fixed income population. I would like to have some discussion about that, because the majority of the people in this community, per our own assessments and Mario did, the housing development report, there's lots of reports, all the information out there for anyone to look at. The majority of people moving into this community they're moving into two-bedroom units, they aren't family units, they're not bringing children into the community. So how do you think people on fixed incomes are going to survive this continual addition to the cost of living?
Joe, can I try to, I appreciate your perspective, I absolutely do, and we're all sensitive to that, and it's not lost upon us here. When we went through this process here a few months ago, in April and prior to that, I should say, we heard from quite a number of folks, or from a fair number of folks, now is not the right time. But I'm not sure what time would ever actually be the right time for a referendum. There's always going to be the need. At that time, whatever the time is, there will always be a number of fixed income people. We respect their situation. We understand that there have been other municipal tax increases for emergency services, for fire department, for police. All that being said, with 11 municipalities having those movements there, our focus here, our task is K-12. Like, what we need to focus on is delivering the education to the approximately 5,000 students in this district. So I respect where you're coming from. I absolutely understand it. I appreciate the comments there. But at the end of the day, if this building's needs will remain, this building will be 71 years next year and 72 after that, and at some point, the needs will become more and more magnified. And I'm not sure at what point we can say, hey, this will be the right time to do it. There will always be these pressures and always these situations and always people with fixed incomes. I wish I had a solution for that. Unfortunately, I don't know that there is one. I'm sorry, that may not be the answer that you're hoping for, but I'm just not sure how to answer that.
So before we go, right up in front there, I saw your hand up many times.
So I am a senior citizen. I am what you're looking for. I'm not a school employee. I don't have children in school. But I want my home to be attractive to whoever wants to buy it in the future. And we have to compete with our surrounding school districts. Muskego Mill
have to look at all buildings need maintenance. I live in a 150-year-old farmhouse, but in your operating budget, you have a budget to take care of those needs every single year. So if you're not doing that, then you're confronted with saying, oh, we need a new building now. I think you all know, I don't support this because I don't think we have given the community the data that we expect in a forum that everyone can look at and understand, so that we don't have these objections. If you want this to pass, you're going to have to convince people who are looking at demographics, looking at school data, how good the outputs are, and they're not seeing improvements. So nobody has said how this is going to improve that bottom line in your example of high school. It doesn't address the school.
So our need at this school is to address several things, and I've said this before. We need to get sixth grade into the middle school. That is the right grade configuration for middle school age kids. Whether you agree with me or not on that, that is what is the right grade configuration. We have capital work that needs to be done here. We have capital work across the 8 buildings in this district that we fund out of our budget. Like I shared before, we are covering roofs, we are covering other expenses. Due to the age of this building, like the age of any older building, those costs go up. And I hope you're available to walk through the school and see some of the costs we're talking about. Those costs go up, they hit a point where we have to say, is it worth investing in a new building here? Or do we reinvest the dollars into the current building that we know is not meeting our instruction? And I can appreciate where you're coming from, and again, we're here to get feedback. We're giving the opportunity for a survey. Sir, you were waiting patiently.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of questions. So, we're assuming a lot of stuff here, especially with the finances here. The interest rates could be 4 or 5%, which it could be if politics plays and boards and prime this law for election. But it's not stopping inflation. Rates are going to go up. It's all fair and much. The numbers here, I think, are low.
I'll ask Brian to address that.
We're assuming. He always said assume. And if they do, that's fine. I don't think these numbers are right. Me personally, everybody else may think that, I don't think they are. I live in the village of Vernon. My assessment went up over $100,000. I'm up over 47%. That makes you happy. I have no kids in the school, haven't been kids in school for almost 20 years. My time to get done with this, about 88 years old. 2/3 of my property tax goes to schools right now. I am on a fixed income. So yes, it is very important. You want to raise it to $100, it does mean something. Why don't you wait till you get the other referendum paid for, which we got stuck with that when they went double the fear on that, just paid it off early. Nothing ever came out to try that. Nothing ever came out to flyer. All of a sudden we just find out, I look at my tax bill, and I'm paying double for that referendum, so we can pay it off early, which is fine. But now you want to tack this on top of it? I never heard of any other solutions here. You have a building here, you got brick and mortar. The next building you're gonna put up is gonna be brick and mortar. Unless they're smart bricks and mortar, where the kids get osmosis, it's not gonna be any different than this building here. I can't say what you've done for maintenance, what you haven't done for maintenance here. My tax dollars have been paying for that for years and years and years. So I don't know if somebody's let it go, where you have to keep up with it or not. But when I have to replace the furnace in my house, I don't tear down the house and build a new house. I replace the furnace. Same thing here. Fix what you got. I think you came in with a referendum saying, okay, we need $20 million to fix this up, get it into space. We're not going to raise this for 21 years. We're going to pay this. You've got probably a better chance of doing it. And as she said before, the overall enrollment of students is going down. It has been since the baby boomers have gotten on this. And the projections are, it's still going to decrease. Now, I haven't heard, why don't we move the 8th grade into high school there? Because we got the state-of-the-art. And you've got plenty of room in this building for everything you want. You showed pictures here in the spring referendum here that, okay, you showed me a picture of a boiler, so obviously you need to replace the boiler. Now we're back to the furnace. You showed me a brick falling off the wall. Well, that's general maintenance. Ceiling tile. Yeah, I can look in here, you got ceiling tile. But again, that's general maintenance. You showed me a picture of kids in the hallway. Well, I remember when I was in high school, when they had between classes, it was packed. It's no different. There were 7th, 8th grade kids in high school I went to. So, move them over there, you've got plenty of space for everybody, you don't have to spend this kind of money.
MHS right now is sitting at I think that 400 and about 5 kids per class, if I'm remembering correctly. We've got about 1620 at MHS right now.
Yeah,
So
we
if
couldn't move
spaced
it
that
right in
way,
there.
we could move another 800, or I'm sorry,
Why
another
don't you
400
spend
students.
$50 million on all state-of-the-art library, state-of-the-art performing arts, state-of-the-art gymnasium? What part of this would get for the kids?
Technical education, cafeteria, academic
Why
spaces.
not more classrooms?
We did that.
Here, it's technical education.
We did that.
Well, second floor.
No, but the thing is, you got state-of-the-art gymnasium, did you need that? You got state-of-the-art football field, did you need that? How many people?
That wasn't referendum paid, that was fundraised.
I mean,
Let's
So,
talk
private
about all this
donations
here.
that would
Guys,
go
I
on
can-
those things.
So there are some questions, that again, if you're available, we're happy to have you, we can take you on a tour, we can talk you through what was done in 2016 to show the impact that 2016 had on the instructional spaces at MHS. From a school standpoint, to add another, essentially to add 25% more space at the high school, that was not considered during the project in 2016 because that is a high school space. High school spaces do not include 8th grade, with the exception of a few high schools in the state that decided to go 7 through 12 instead of having 9 through 12 at the high school space. Sir, your clarification.
Absolutely. My name is Patrick. I do not currently live in this community. It is a community I'm considering moving to. My fiance went to the school here. She grew up here. She's one of 7 children who went to this school. This is an attractive community for me, and I'm one of 20 people, community members here, and I don't represent everyone in my age demographic. I'm 31 years old. I was getting married in February, and I want to have children immediately. Now, to the point earlier of surrounding school districts having newer and better facilities, I understand that a huge portion of the community is in that upper echelon of the age group. And Mukwonago, in my mind, can go one of 2 ways. It can continue in that trend, or it can build facilities that are flagship facilities that attract people. And you brought up conversations of studies that you read about bringing 6th grade students in here. I would urge you, and I applaud you for your research, but I would also urge you to read on creature comfort studies, and classroom sizes, and these studies that are done when creating better learning environments and what that does in what your point was in the skewed data that can come from bigger municipalities. I work with a company called Upper 90. We retrofit buildings just like this. We look at school districts just like this who simply can't go to referendum or whatever it is, and they have a $9 million need right now. We're doing this in Arcadia right now. We looked at 2 buildings, and we're not even close to finishing the study that we're doing there, and they have $10 million in needs between boiler replacements that are 30 to 40 years old. The average life should be about 25 to 30 years. These costs are $500,000 for one boiler. And when we're talking these prices in 2020, to your point earlier also, and what I formerly was going to live in Verona area. They built their high school for $170 million and completed construction in 2019. That cost today would be like $230 to $240 million. It's insane how fast the price of this stuff is getting and how much more costly it is. And when I look at every single week, I travel to different school districts from single schools like Kickapoo, all 2.5 hours, 3 hours away from here, Arcadia, who has 3 buildings. I look at all these vast different schools. When we're talking about maintenance budgets and why aren't we staying on top of it, this might be one of the better school districts in the entire state. I look at this data every day. This is my job to do. And this school is staying on top. There's not a single school district in the state of Wisconsin who could stay on top of it because of the way the budgets work. And I think it was in 1993. Yes. So when this law was passed, schools who spent recklessly were rewarded because now they have this giant budget, and schools who spent conservatively, their budget was stuck, and it's this fixed thing that we can't increase without asking the community's help for these things. So what I'm urging for my age demographic is, my fiance works at the Milwaukee VA, and we don't want to live in Milwaukee. I don't want to pay taxes in Milwaukee. I don't want to do any of that. This is an attractive community right here that is easy to get
get to those places if we want to, and where the property values are insanely great and they're only going to increase. So for my age demographic, and I get it, I'm 120 and I don't represent my entire demographic, but this is an attractive community for people in my age to help grow Mukwonago in another way that isn't just this aging demographic, if that makes sense. And again, I don't live in the community. It's somewhere I want to buy a home. There's 4 houses down the road right there that I've looked at the past week. It's something that I very much want to do. It's where I want my kids to go, and I personally am very much in favor of this, and that's easy to say for someone who doesn't pay the taxes right now, and I fully understand that.
Just remember, our country is $34 trillion in debt, and unless there's some people willing, sometimes they're like, to say, no, we're not going to spend any more money, this is going to come back on us. I'm not anti this move. I asked for questions. I just wanted to make sure that we're in good stead here. But for us to be, as a community, to be concerned about the government agency firing off another $100 million in a country that's $34 trillion in debt, and $1 trillion in debt every 100 days, it is not unreasonable for us to try to do our part and say, I'll just say this one last thing on it. I don't mean this in any level of disrespect, but there's a trust issue here. All like Lucky Clutch guys, we said at April's vote, it's going to get voted down for 30 days to 60 days. They're going to come back with an alternative. And how do we know right now that there's not a $62 million alternative versus the 89? Because we went from 102 to 89 in 30 days. So how do I know there's Joe doesn't have a Senate? Take it word for word. How do we know there's not a $60 million alternative that really fits the schedule? This is a trust issue in a lot of my friends' point of view. And I just want us to be careful about this excessive need to spend money. Baby boomers became the wealthiest generation in history because you know how to manage money. This current generation doesn't know how to manage money. It's all about spend. So sometimes 80%, getting 80% is good enough. Right? You don't have to have 100% of everything. Tell my kids every day, I'm a little disappointed in you. I wish your room was 60. I wish you had a walk-in closet with that, but you don't. Get over it. Right? So I'm just telling you, $34 trillion of debt, and this is a government agency wanting to spend an enormous amount of money. Numbers change very quickly. That makes me nervous.
So anybody in your coffee culture, if they want to come in and meet, I'm happy to do that. And that was one of the things that as a result of this, and I'll get to just in 1 second, one of the things, the reason why we felt we needed to come back and ask this question in the survey format again was because we went years without hearing anything. We put a $102 million project out there. We had very little community feedback on that 102. And so regardless of the fact that the referendum failed on April 2nd, the ability to go back when people are paying attention is extremely important. Because again, some of the feedback that we heard was, I didn't hear about this until I got this one postcard. But that information had been advertised in our system at Finance and Facilities Committee meetings, at school board meetings, and through the triad since 2017. So anybody who has questions, any group that wants to meet, anybody who wants to come in to see what we're looking at, happy to do so. And again, one of the reasons why we're here. Any other question?
I wasn't able to hear everything. I'm just wondering, was there any of the conversation about funding from the state? Like, so the burden has all fallen on community now?
Yep.
We're not getting it from the states anymore?
Yep, so the revenue limits, and Tom, our business official, can kind of get into this. The amount of spending that we were able to generate as a school district was established in 1993, 31 years ago, when revenue limits were put in place. It was part of a three-legged stool. Brian, I'm going to look at you. It was the revenue limits, it was the QEO, and it was the state aid. And that was frozen in 1993. The QEO went away, the state aid has stayed the same.
It's still there. State is still funding a portion. It's
And
just
as
not
a-
at 2/3.
Right.
But it's funded.
It was 2/3 more. And as a school district, we have maintained that funding level. We have been one of the lowest funded school districts in the state since 1993. Tom, you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we have been one of the lowest funded school districts in the state of Wisconsin for 31 years. Still are, as a matter of fact. Time for last. So, in some of the feedback that we heard from community members following the April votes, it was set money aside to pay for the building from your operating budget. Again, I respect the perspective on that and being fiscally frugal, which I believe we are very fiscally conservative here as a school district, as a school board, and we try to make wise decisions that our taxpayers can be proud of. Saving up to pay for a brand new building is I think, very similar to saving up to the full cost before you buy a house. I think generally speaking, what you're going to find is that it's really hard to reach that finish line because you can save $1 million or $500,000 in a year, but with inflation continuing to push that finish line further and further out, you can never truly get there. So much like most homeowners, they purchase their house through a loan and then they pay it back. As much as I'd like to believe that we could one day set enough money aside to not do this through a referendum, trust me, I would do that. I just mathematically and realistically think that's completely impossible. The state laws in terms of funding our school district, again, we are one of the lightest funded school districts on a per student basis. With that being said, in our 3+ decades of being in that boat, we have no choice but to do things fiscally conservative at all times. The state is not increasing our funds.
Why? Why?
That's a state representative, state senator, and state governor question. I am not the man to answer that one. Okay? But inflation moves, and I've been here in this district for just about 9 years, and we've had many years here where we were given $0 increase to our budget. Inflation continued to move, and we, despite having the lowest number didn't move a dollar. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but the state isn't providing as much help as I wish they would. Had state funding kept pace with inflation, we should have $3,000 more per student today than what we do have. That's our reality.
Juliet?
Yes, I just wanted to address, you keep making the statement that you have a lot of people that are coming into this community. I believe you said the majority of them are on fixed income. So I'd like to know where you're getting that information, because I think it's valid for you and the district to respond to that. Okay. I want to see that information. I think we all should understand that. And then, I'm a senior. I never had children who went through this district, but I have grandchildren. They're already out of this district. Why do you feel that it is not the continued responsibility of a resident, even if you're on fixed income, to not be contributing to the growth of your community? And I believe the investment is, as long as it's a smart investment, and I think they're being very transparent about what we're trying to do. Why do you feel that it's not a responsibility, as you continue to live in the community, to support the growth of education, which improves our population? You have children who are educated, who get jobs, who support businesses. It's a circle that comes back to all of us. So I don't think you just make that statement. Over 20 years, so I've seen it change quite a bit. I'm not saying I don't support maintaining a high level of education. My question is, why does it always have to be buildings that have a lot of extracurricular things that never seem to improve the ACT scores and the performance of students? If you go to the state of Wisconsin, look at our ranking and the percentage of students, as you mentioned, you're at 60%, and you said around 80, I haven't seen that, but 60% performance is not acceptable. So for me, I would love to support that the education is improved, so the outcome is improved, but I do not see any information about how you consider the demographics or the consideration for seniors who are on fixed income, because though they would love to, they can't, because this keeps going up and up. So you keep saying you would take individuals on tours. That is not going to help the community, and you didn't send out your information about this to the seniors who would see it. They don't
So we
see
sent
that.
direct mailing to the seniors. So So when we did the original survey last summer, 12 months ago, that informed the project that we brought in April, our seniors, the non-parents, non-staff members, said, please send us paper. They wanted direct mail, and we have done it. We have sent direct mailing to the Triad, we sent postcards out, we advertised the April 2nd, and then we advertised through paper the survey that is in people's
The
hands.
information you sent to Triad did not address demographics.
But, and I appreciate that you,
Information about what you hoped for.
I appreciate that you want to hear about demographics, I do. And we did not include that in there. As I mentioned, Mr. Clark earlier sent us an email. That will go on. We will meet with Mr. Clark. We will go over it, make sure we have these questions answered. And that's going to go on our website as an FAQ. And that will, his questions did touch on demographics. It touched on growth. It touched on our community, everything else. We will be building that in. We did not put that in there. And I can't change that that wasn't in there. But the part from a community standpoint is this work has been in the works. This discussion has been happening for 7 years. It's been happening for 7 years at school board meetings. It's been advertised in the Triad for 7 years. It has been sent out in direct mail for 7 years. It has been done at community sessions. And what I'm about to say may not be popular, but I can't help that people didn't pay attention until we're in this conversation now, or what happened in April. I cannot force someone to read their mail. I can't force somebody to go to our website. I can't force somebody to watch our school board meetings. And that is where that work has been happening going back to, I believe it was December of 2017. Was the first meeting at Parkview Middle School where we began to discuss facilities. Jill, I think you were on the school board
Yes,
at that
I
time?
was. I attend the majority of school board meetings, whether I'm there in person or I do it virtually because I'm retired. And I don't live in this community 4 months out of the year. I pay taxes, but I don't live here. The amount of people, if we could get this attendance, even half of this attendance, to be at a school board meeting, half of the time, that would be a huge amount. Because usually I'm one of 4 people in the audience.
Well, that's probably because people who raise their children, who don't have them probably more, they've already done all that.
Yeah.
You see, so you have to, this is why, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've worked with seniors for a long time. And the consistent thing, the reason why you got your no vote is because things were not addressed. And you blow them off, but you're not going to get your referendum passed.
But ma'am, we didn't blow them off. We didn't blow the feedback off. We reduced the cost of the project by 2/3. Individuals in this room said it's too expensive. We reduced the mill rate by 2/3. We listened to them. We talked about a timing thing. Individuals in this room said, you're going in April. Why don't you go in November? We're talking about a possible November time. That's what this schedule is. People talked about reusing the current facility that we're in. We're adding 32,000 square feet. To say we're not listening to people, that is not an accurate statement. Because the feedback from gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen who are in this room right now, who gave that to us, informed the feedback that we used to put this survey together. So that is what we have done is take what the citizens told us and put it into our plan.
I have a question. I feel very much like I'm on everybody's side. My mother lives with us. She moved in with my father who's disabled because they live on a fixed income, so it makes more sense. Everybody has a story, a situation, and they're all valid, every one of them. And my question is, like I said, I didn't vote for this because there's no safety measures in any of these plans. And everybody who ran for school board touted safety, 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 safety. This will never happen in our community. And my son comes to the school every day. I went to the school every day, and we went on 5 lockdowns this year because of threats. Whether people want to blow them off and say, oh, they're nothing, they're nothing. I don't know if people remember 5-6 years ago, the gentleman that was stabbed at the BP by a student from Mukwonago who was no longer in the school but was a student, and several of my teacher friends that I talked with, everybody was like, well, it's one of 3 kids. Everybody knew who it was. Everybody knew who it had to have been. And luckily she, went to BP that day and stabbed a man, did her school and stabbed a kid. As far as size-wise in this school, I also wanted to mention, these aren't kids. My son is bigger than Tom. These are big kids. These are men. These are some women that are girls that are 6 feet tall. I mean, 26 kids the size of, you know, Dr. Joe here don't fit in a tiny little classroom either. There are demographics that have changed over the years too. Kids have gotten bigger, they've gotten stronger, they're starting sports earlier, doing things earlier. My question, my very serious question is that you've taken down things. Everything that was on the original referendum, we need it. Becky worked at, you know, BBS. I've been there a million times. The parking lot's a nightmare. The corner they're on is a joke. She spent 6 years petitioning that community, Big Bend, Waukesha County, everybody that would listen to her to try to get crosswalks, to try to get crossing guards, to try to get anybody that would help the congestion, the commotion there. So all these things that have been taken off, where did they go?
So we still possess them.
You know what I'm saying? Like how,
some of the feedback, so to your question, what happened to the work that led up to April? We still have the work, but what we heard was, don't confuse us with the April project. Because the April project talked about different school building, it talked about kindergarten, it talked about everything else. We still have access to that facility study, and that is stuff that we can put up, the work that happened back in April of the year ago. So that could be done.
Well, that was another comment I want to make really quickly about 4K, because I think this is a really big misunderstanding with kids, with people that don't have kids in the district. 4K is already here. It's been here. It's sponsored here. It's paid for here. The kids just aren't in the school. They're in Big Bend and they're in Clarendon. Otherwise, they're at the Y. They're at Vernon Presbyterian. There was 2 daycares that I think belong Kids Connection, but Little Lambs closed down this year. They're 4K. So they're just not in our schools. But we're paying for them to go to 4K. So that's, you know, I think some people thought we were introducing 4K, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. It's not an introduction. Bringing the kids here, they're already here. We're already footing the bill for that, from, you know, that perspective. But I guess that was my question, is that, okay, say this gets approved, then how do we go about fixing all the things that were in the original referendum that desperately need that, though, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely understand what you're saying. I think the best answer that I can offer to you is that we, as the school board works on annual budgets, we have to find ways in the very near future to begin to address those things as the need arises. So like as I think about 4K, we had 6 community partners, we're down to 3. So as those community partners, you mentioned Little Lambs, they backed out, they're no longer operating. We have to take those students back and find a home for them. There are no other community partners we can work with, so we bring them into Clarendon, Big Bend, and Prairie View. Our elementary schools, as traditionally hosting 5K through 6, are now 4K, becoming more and more 4K through 6. So there is an inherent pressure on our elementary schools as community partners go away. So we'll address the 4K projects, which we will continue to need as the need arises by school. So if a community partner, let's say Kids Connection, and they're a fabulous partner right now, and I have no concerns at this time about them. Well, just hypothetically, where do those kids live if they went away? We would have to look at where are those kids coming from, and do we need to find a way to do an element of the project just at Section Elementary in 2024? Do we have to look at doing something at Rolling Hills in 2026? So as the need presents itself, we'll have to try to find a way to make that happen. Regarding the safety element at Big Bend, and Becky, I'm aware of all that you've done there. I want to say I appreciate every last effort you put in. Again, that safety issue is going to have to come before the board to see if that's something that the priority is it completely there? Do we have to address it? And if so, how quickly?
I just think for me personally, like, you know, people, this is a small community.
Yes.
We have friends, we have people that teach, we know people, you know, this isn't a secret. But like, you know, we talk about not wanting things, metal detectors and all that. Nobody wants to look like we're from Milwaukee. And where I come from, the more affluent you are, the safer you are, right? Like a gated community or a fancy hotel where they valet your car and you don't even have to walk in the parking lot. To me, the safer we are, the more locked down we are, the more affluent our community appears. So like I said, for me personally, very personally, it's the fact that if you're gonna put up everything brand new, right, a brand new building, wouldn't that make the most sense to put those safety measures in then? Wouldn't that be the most cost effective and?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The front entrance, absolutely. The camera systems in the building, absolutely. Door sensors in the building, absolutely. Any human monitoring that we can do, absolutely makes sense within the school. Working to retrofit a older building, you just wouldn't have some of the same design features of an older building that you would do with a modern school. And the high school is a perfect example of that, with the senior foyer, where everybody comes through, how they get checked in. That flow at the high school is what it is, because it goes through the space. Sir, you were very patient.
The April referendum was presented to us as phase 2. What are we looking at future-wise?
So there is no plan for a phase 3. And phase 2 came out of like the first project done.
Yeah, I'd say this. We never called the Mukwonago High School project in 2016 phase 1. It was just a need at that time. As we took a look at like the next step after that, it was just natural to call a high school phase 1 and then this one phase 2. We don't have phase 3 or 4 or 5 mapped out. We don't have that. It's just really first things first. This is the biggest need and the biggest priority of the school district at this time.
Isn't Clarendon just as old as this school or even older?
What part, Clarendon was...
Clarendon had a major renovation in 1999. So it's not, this building was built in 55, and then we had an addition, and then a couple additions. Clarendon had a major renovation in 1899, same time when Rolling Hills was built.
Yeah, I'm just worried that, by calling people sort of around phase 2, it kind of foreshadowed itself.
Right. To say that there would never be a need for future work, that I'd be lying to you if I said there would never be a need for future work. There's no plan to do anything in the future, particularly if the middle school goes to a 6-8 building, then you have space in your elementary schools to accommodate for growth. If the elementary schools stay the same size and we experience the projected enrollment, that usually starts for us at that elementary level. We start to see the growth happen at the elementary level. That then starts to have an elementary discussion. The part though, and somebody mentioned it earlier, is you accept the number of students in under open enrollment. We have the ability to address that elementary-wise if we started to see a large increase in the Mukwonago schools. So, does that happen? I don't know. I've got 11 years left. This is the last time I want to ask this question. Then I'll be retired and I'm done. Some of the school folks around here understand, what that is. But there is no phase 3 on books. There's no phase 3 drawing. Like Tom said, the high school retroactively got named phase 1 as the middle school project was being talked about. Sir.
So on the mill sheet, when you say 24 cents, that's a net increase. That's not the actual cost of the middle school project. It didn't really reduce by 2/3. It's a mill rate of $1.21.
The mill rate from April to the mill rate now, the increase went down by 2/3.
But you're playing games with debt in the first several years. When you get to when it's clean, it's $1.21. Your payments didn't go down by 2/3. You're playing debt games in the first couple of years. So I think that's why some people are saying they don't trust the number. When you reduce debt by 10 million, you can't say it costs 2/3 less.
Yeah, that's not what he's saying. He's saying the impact over the $1.21, which is clear and consistent in all the messaging that we've been presenting, went from 69 down to 24. That's the 2/3 he's talking about. So I just want to be clear, there are no games, we are clear that we are structuring this around the repayment of the high school debt.
When I'm saying games, I mean you're mixing two different levels.
Yeah, on purpose, yeah, because that's how you would do it at home. When your last major investment, you're looking at what the next major investment is, you're going to try and structure it around your final payments. So that's clearly what this is doing, on purpose.
And I understand that. I'm just saying, like, I know when I talk to other people, they're like, you go from 103 to 89, and you're saying the cost reduced by 2/3.
No.
One
the
plus
increase
three doesn't
over
equal
current
up.
changed, the 69 to the 24 is, so maybe we should stop using that as a reference because it's confusing to people. It is what I'm showing you right here. And like I said, you can disagree with my assumptions all you want. You're right, that's why I put the
I'm
assumptions.
just talking about your interest rates.
No, that's what I'm saying, and the interest rates are a big part of it. And the previous one was run at a 5 1/4, and had you approved it, we'd be locking in the 4 1/4, right? So we would have been a full percentage point on 103 million, which would have been about 10 million-ish of interest cost savings. So I understand, that's why I'm the one that defends putting the assumptions on all these visuals, because it matters. And you're right, if I'm wrong, and again, I'm using an estimate, I'm not projecting, because I don't have that crystal ball. If rates are higher than 4.75, then you're right, the mill rate will be a little higher than 24 cents.
And that's what I said, we can sit here and argue back and forth.
Exactly, yeah.
We don't know what.
So I just want to make sure it's clear, because I don't like the terminology of playing games, because we are clear and consistent in the message that we are paying off the existing high school debt and layering in the new investment in the new hypothetical at an increase of 24 cents.
I'm a finance guy also, I do understand this. What I'm saying is, when you say 103 to 89, and then you say it's 2/3 less, that doesn't add up to most people. I get this, but when you don't
So I think we
represent...
just change our verbiage on
Let's
this.
say it again.
Yeah, because you're right, the 13 on 103 is about a 13%-ish,
Yeah.
14 or 12-ish% reduction in the scope of project. The change in the increase of the mill rate is what's going down to the 45.
I mean, including numbers like cost per square foot went from 307 down to 301, using numbers that are consistent from time over time. Like you use, like when you use numbers, it's important, like you said, the assumptions and making sure it's clear. Like if you have to spend a lot of time explaining it, not a very good report. You're supposed to be a financial storyteller, and from a finance guy, I totally get it. But I talk to other people, and they're like, what are they trying to pull? 89, 103. Doesn't make sense to say it's 2/3 less. I appreciate saying the net impact, but we also need to talk about what is the annual debt repayment total dollar going to be? The old one might have been 5.5, and this one's going to be 5.25 million. Talk about the net impact to the total community, and then distill it down to what an individual rate would be. But when you start just saying 2/3 less, it doesn't build trust when you're like, when it's not 100% clear what you mean.
So I do want to address that. We did get a number of questions of people who asked, how could the mill rate impact go from 69 cents to 24? So everybody has different questions. So we try to answer everybody's individual questions. Some people had the question, why did the mill rate drop by 2/3? So we attempted to answer that. We assumed that question might be in the room tonight. And so we did our best to answer that. But as Brian said, we're not trying to game anything. We're just trying to satisfy every potential question that might be out there in a fixed amount of words that isn't confusing. Much easier said than done. But we're trying our best here to do that. The net bottom line is this screen here, 24 cents higher than where we are today. If people want to typically know, well, what's the bottom line? What's the brass tacks here? Where's it at? It's a $24 increase per $100,000, so the property's value. We provide that $100,000 value not because there's $100,000 houses for sale, because you can do the easy multiplication off of $100,000 based on whatever your house might happen to be it 500,000 or 700,000.
But when you say today, I mean, there should be a note saying, hey, this is taking into account the fact that the high school referendum tax is not going down. That's being extended out for 21 years when you say this.
Yeah, I mean, it says it, the last sentence says it. It says, impact represents the estimated increase in the mill rate for referendum-approved debt service over the 23-24 mill rate for debt service of $1.21. So that is the equivalent of that bar chart. So all of this will be available and is available through the communication process if there's a future process. But I mean, I can't make it much more simple than that bar chart.
What I'm saying is, this wasn't the survey that was sent out in the email, was it?
No. This is the information for tonight's discussion.
What I'm saying is, you're asking people to respond. What was sent out via email and via mail had a little less information, a little less detail than this.
I agree, intentional or not, it's misleading. And when I read that first note that came back in the mail, I told myself there was no way that could be. And I thought it had to be an extension of the current debt for another 20 years.
So it's not the current debt, it's the payment. It's the,
Yes, it's the current.
Yeah, okay.
Tax.
So we're saying the same thing, right?
So back to his point, it's more than $100 when we have to pay that debt for 20 additional years.
Because the existing one's going down, so you're not adding, you're not stacking.
It'll be gone in a few years.
It will be.
Then it continues for another 14, 15.
The new debt.
The new debt will continue for another 14.
It's like rolling your old car loan into your new car loan, and it just keeps going. You make the same payment forever, and you just get new schools.
If this timeline could travel out further here, it would continue out for grand
Forever.
So no,
21 years.
Oh, it's not rebuilding, I mean.
I think there would be less confusion if all of these slides were sent with the email that went out, because there's some extra detail in here that was not in that survey. Because I talked to people who saw that survey and they were like, something smells funny. And if you look at these slides, they explain what the difference is. It's a net impact. It's not the total cost isn't reduced. Net impact.
Guys, I can appreciate the comments about what people are hearing. One of the things that we have done is made ourselves available to answer any questions and talk through this. If I provide somebody with a chart and the chart doesn't have enough explanation, then the question is going to come in, why don't you extend it out 21 years? You know, so the information needs to come through a conversation. And we are available to have those conversations. We're available to answer questions. We are there to come to a group and present the information on it. But people need to come and ask the source what the question is. Because if we were to bundle a 30 some odd slide presentation and send that to folks to make sense of, the financial folks are not going to be there to discuss that. The history isn't going to be there. So if we add the history into that graph and we show 7 years worth of work, then what we hear from people is, that's too much information. How am I going to get that? Can you distill that down for me? So that's the reason why we're here tonight. We're here to have a community presentation. Why we are available, why our names are on that survey to reach out and ask questions. And we will get back to people. Mr. Clark sent me an email. It was very detailed. It had a lot of questions. I asked him for a few days to get back, but I did respond to him that day, and that is how we operate. Are there any other questions? Sir?
From the meetings that we had new, I asked a question of what our reserves were with the school district. And right now we're sitting, if I remember rightly, about $9 million in reserves. Is there a reason we're not using some of that to pay for, and the April also said we had $7.2 million in repairs that would be needed to make at some time. We don't need to make those all on January 1st of 25. We're going to make those as they're actually needed. Why can't the buildings continue to be funded, if not with the maintenance budget, with some of the reserves?
So if you go to the March school board meeting from a couple months ago, I presented the State of the Union on the district's financials, where we stand.
Okay. Our
district in our general fund has $4 million that the school board can use at their discretion. If they were to spend all $4 million, our cash flow situation would be such that we would bottom out in November and December before our tax revenues come back to us. I would love to avoid short-term borrowings. It's an unnecessary interest expense that taxpayers pay. So there's a proper amount of reserves that should be kept on hand to eliminate unnecessary costs. As for the 30-year capital plan, we have approximately $9 million to set aside for that. Those are going to pay for the $1.7 million roof at Clarendon next year, the $1.8 million roof that you'll see cranes at Mukwonago High School in a couple of weeks. Rolling Hills was built in 1999-2000. That roof now is 25 years old and end of life. It's those costs that we know that $9 million is going to go for. In anybody's personal financial situation, I recommend have some money set aside for the unforeseen, because you never know. To spend it all, all of our reserves, I would say is reckless, and we shouldn't be doing that. Something may happen. We have reserves. We'll be prepared for if that something happens, but we can't spend it all.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting draining the bank completely. I'm saying some of those need to be done more
So-
immediate than others.
The 4K projects that we took off the table, we're gonna have to do that. The parking lot at Big Bend, the school board's gonna have to consider doing things on our operating budget to alleviate that. By dropping the project by $13.2 million, there were projects we took off the table and the needs are still there. We're gonna have to dedicate some of our reserve funds to that, or at a minimum, consider that.
Thank you, one last time. It's frustrating watching a state of Wisconsin with $8 billion surplus, which we paid in taxes. A lot of it was COVID relief, but through funding of federal government, they're sitting at $8 billion worth of surplus. And yet, which we paid, and now it's just sitting there, and now we're being asked to give more. It just seems like it just keeps getting bigger, and it always comes back to the taxpayer. We've already funded this government to a $8 billion surplus. Where are they? Where is the state on this? This is, I know you have no control over it, but it's nuts.
And I won't argue with you on that point at all. I mean, that is an excellent point. There's areas in our district budget the state used to fund at 65 to 70%, particularly special education. They fund it right now at about 31%. And that number fluctuates. The state will not even reallocate the money to students with disabilities in the districts. So that is a reality that we face. That results, Tom, what do we have to transfer out of the general fund every year?
$7 million.
$7 million. The state is sitting on $8 million. I agree with you 100%, but there is no movement at the state government to increase funding for even things that I think everybody agrees with. If you would just fund the services for students with disabilities, but they're not doing that. And then that comes out of the local dollars. Tom talked about short-term borrowing, reserves were mentioned, all of that factors in.
I don't think people here realize how fiscally responsible our people are. They looked at the cost to remodel this building, $80 million. But $80 million in a 70-year-old building, when you can get a brand new building for $9 million more.
I think in many ways, it can be at some point, I shared this at one of our community sessions here in spring. I have a 2009 car. I paid $2,400 to get it fixed. My wife asked, why did you put that much money into the car? You should have just bought a new one and quit wasting your money on fixing it. She's probably right. You don't tell her I said that, but she's probably right. There comes a point when you ask yourself, do I need to continuously put money into something that's going to eventually need a replacement anyway? When is that time here? That's the question for us to answer. It's not just for Dr. Cook or myself or the 9 school board members, it's us. And so I know we're getting late into the evening, we're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. If there are,
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's individual questions, or sir, you got one?
I have one about the survey itself. So, I know you're getting low survey returns, maybe 2,000-3,000, you said. And how many voters are there? Eligible, 10?
Yeah, so just for perspective on survey return, when the referendum went through in 2016, we had about 2,600 responses on the survey. When we got feedback for April, I think we were at about 3,400 responses.
Okay.
Right now, we're at 2,600 again. So go ahead.
So the follow-up is, the average person is getting one request per household when there's 2 or 3 voters possibly in the house.
Yeah.
You're sending out that number of survey and you're getting those back. How many are you actually sending out and getting back? A high percentage. But people aren't requesting additional surveys to, in the household. So you're not really hearing from the community, and that's why you have a 10% spread in your last referendum. You're hearing from a third of the people.
Yeah.
Until I looked at the comments on the paperwork, and I'm the guy who reads every single thing and analyzes it and says, okay, now I can do it. I had to read in the fine print, and I didn't see it the first time, that if you want additional surveys for your household, call this number and write this address and request them, and then you can fill out your own survey.
By a certain date.
Yeah, so I would like to know why with current voter rolls that we just had a month before the survey was sent out, why isn't it personalized for every voter?
so that there's an encouragement for everyone to respond instead of just a household vote.
I don't know, that, the voter rolls belong to the municipal governments and aren't ours to have.
That's a poor excuse.
I don't know that we have access, can we even get them, Joe?
I've never been
What
able.
we're looking for is accuracy on what the people really want.
Well, we are too, we certainly are too.
Okay, so we need to change that.
You can do it online.
You can go online.
You can go online. I did mine online. My wife did
Right,
hers
but
online.
it says clearly that in order for you to get another invitation, you have to write or call and set it up so that you can do it.
But you can-
I guarantee you, there's such a small percentage of people in a household doing that, that your survey results are skewed because of the low numbers that you send out per household versus how many there really
The
are.
only thing I would say to that is, we sent out 16,000 surveys, 16,000, and we got 3,600 back. So it's more, it is more than just, you're not sending out enough, right? Because if 12,000 people are opting not to complete the survey, there is an engagement piece that we just don't have.
I guarantee you,
And-
you're right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
right, and so if people are not gonna weigh in and not get the information, we're doing the community nights, this is being recorded, it's gonna be on our website. We do direct mailing, we do everything that the community has asked us to do. But if people don't wanna take a minute to complete a survey, right, we are gonna have the best data that we have. Now, when we look at the survey results at the end, we take a look and we say 25% of these respondents we're gonna give weight to for being teachers and parents. 75% of this survey response, we're gonna say this is what the community is saying. It touches on people who don't have children yet, people who don't have children in our district anymore, people who just moved in, it covers the rest. And we give more weight to whatever results we get from the non-teacher, non-parent group. Because we know from a mathematical standpoint, that's the best, those are the best percentages that we can do. We work with a company called School Perceptions that does this for every school district. Clint, they do hundreds of them within every 5-year period of time. Most of the school referendum that are proposed in the state partners with School Perceptions to try to get as accurate community data as they can. The data that they had this April run, 21 of the 24 school districts that followed the results passed their referendum. We were one of 3 that didn't. So they have a very accurate based off of this, and this isn't just unique to Mukwonago, right? I mean, you get your survey responses from everywhere. We're very happy that we've had the engagement that we've had. We would love to see more, but we do need accurate data. And so for your friends who have it, have them fill it out. Please ask them to fill it out. If nothing else, don't tell them.
I'm not saying
Just please ask them.
I would like that changed in the future. Would you be willing to, I mean, this kind of thing is a personal thing for every voter.
Right.
But you're reaching 1/3 of the people with your household vote, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
So you're right off the bat, the average person's gonna fill out that survey, and the other 2 voters in that home are like,
But we do have a number of folks that reach out and ask us for additional. We have people dropping into our district
Why should they have?
daily, asking for them. Big basket right in the front for folks to grab them. Ben, who handles communications for us in the back, has the computer set up and he has additional surveys figured out. So we are making the outreach.
People are here, so how would that help? I'm interested in getting a real community report on as many people as we can. And the way I see it set up is you're probably getting a third. And you're wondering why you're getting low numbers, and I'm just offering that that's probably why. Because it's the same as privacy notices sent out for your credit card. By default, you're in everything, every third party, everything. And who's sending back the signed form saying that, no, I don't want all my private information going everywhere? It's the same principle is all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Okay, well, at least I'm done about that. What can you do between now and to let people know that, it's more than one survey per household, so you get a more accurate feedback? I don't think we're getting the accurate feedback, and that's why there was such a skew in the first referendum. That's what I asked, really. If you really reached everybody, I think you would pass.
Well, if we reached everybody, we probably wouldn't have gone and asked the question, right? Because I mean, that would have, at the end of the day, if everybody would have weighed in on the survey, we would have found in the survey results that there wasn't enough support to go to referendum in April, right? So we took what we had, we took those folks that engaged, we gave weight to the individuals who aren't necessarily connected to our district, and we said, all right, we have this percentage of folks that said we will support this, and we went to the ballot with them. That's what we did. We also heard though from some folks that, hey, you went at the wrong time. And what we learned was on April 2nd, which was the 2 days after our spring break ended, what we found on Monday was our school district's attendance rate was 84%. What we heard from parents was we didn't absentee ballot, we extended our spring break, we thought it was going to pass, right? That was feedback that we had. So, right, if we had everybody participate, we probably wouldn't have had this support. Which is again why we're here now. People know about this. People are paying attention to this. It's a better time for us to ask and get that feedback. And that's because that is extremely important. It will inform whatever next decision we make. To get more folks, I mean, I could go door to door and ask them to fill it out. You know,
I think the commonality is that there seems to be a big gap between the people that are, actively involved in school because they're teaching, have kids or whatever, and the people that aren't.
Right.
And that bridge needs to be that needs to be.
Absolutely. There's overwhelming support from people who are connected to the schools. There was overwhelming support when we did the project in April. The parents and the teachers said, yes, go for this. But when we looked at the community groups that were the citizens, the general citizens, it was closer. And so we went to the ballot at that particular time. And that was a similar result to what the district saw in 2016. There's overwhelming support by the people who are connected to it. You have to take that out of the factor, and you have to look at those individuals who respond, who are non-parents, non-teachers.
Thank you for your answer.
Anybody who's available?
Yeah, I was going to say, your handlers kicked off at 8 o'clock. It got noticeably warmer. Apologies for that. If you have individual questions, we'll stay up here to help answer whatever you have.
So if you are interested in a tour, before you break away, Mr. Spielman is available. He can show you the CTE spaces, the library, the boiler room, take you a little bit around the school. Should take somewhere in the 10 to 15 minute time frame, depending on how many questions you have.